Staring at this email from my mom after 6 years of complete silence hits different when you are 35 and have built an entirely new life. The subject line reads, "Time to heal. Brooke is pregnant," and my hands are literally shaking as I read words I never thought I would see again. 6 years ago, I discovered my husband Travis in bed with my sister Brooke, and when I demanded my family choose between supporting me or accepting their relationship, they chose them. I walked away from everyone I had ever loved, and I have not spoken to a single family member since that devastating day. But now they want back in, and what I discovered about their true motives will change everything you think you know about family loyalty. Before I share what happened next, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from, and do not forget to hit like and subscribe. What I discovered about my family's true intentions will completely shock you. My story begins 9 years ago when I married Travis at 25 in what felt like the perfect fairy tale wedding. We had this beautiful ceremony at a vineyard outside Portland, Oregon, surrounded by everyone we loved. Travis was this successful tech guy with the kindest brown eyes and the most genuine smile, and from the moment my family met him, they welcomed him with open arms. My dad would take him fishing. My mom would cook his favorite meals, and honestly, they treated him more like a son than a son-in-law. Our family was incredibly close-knit back then. Every Sunday we would gather at my parents' house for dinner, sharing stories and laughter around that old oak dining table. Christmas mornings were magical with all of us opening gifts together, and we took these amazing family vacations every summer to places like Lake Tahoe and the Oregon coast. Travis fit seamlessly into all of our traditions, helping my dad with the barbecue, watching football with my mom, and always bringing the perfect bottle of wine to dinner. But the most precious relationship in my life was with my sister Brooke. She was 3 years younger than me with the same green eyes and freckles, but where I was cautious and thoughtful, she was spontaneous and adventurous. We were best friends in every sense of the word. We would go shopping together every Saturday, take girls' trips to San Francisco and Seattle, and stay up until 3 in the morning talking about everything and nothing. When she got married to Kevin 2 years after my wedding, I was her maid of honor, and I cried happy tears as I watched her walk down the aisle. Travis and I spent our first 4 years of marriage in complete bliss. We bought this charming craftsman house in the suburbs with a white picket fence and a garden that I loved tending on weekends. We had date nights every Friday, taking turns picking restaurants and activities around Portland. We traveled together, constantly exploring places like Costa Rica, Italy, and New Zealand, always planning our next adventure. Travis had this successful career as a software engineer at Intel, and I was advancing quickly as a physical therapist at Oregon Health and Science University. We were actively trying to start a family, going to fertility consultations and tracking ovulation cycles, dreaming about converting the spare bedroom into a nursery. Everyone called us the perfect couple, and honestly, I believed we were. Travis would bring me coffee in bed every morning, leave little love notes in my lunch bag, and surprise me with flowers just because it was Tuesday. We shared everything: our dreams, our fears, our hopes for the future. But around our 4th year of marriage, subtle changes began creeping in that I initially dismissed as normal relationship evolution. Travis started working later more frequently, claiming that Intel was launching this major new product that required extended hours. He would come home after 9 o'clock exhausted and distant, barely engaging in our usual evening conversations. His phone would ring during dinner, and he would excuse himself to take these urgent work calls that seemed to happen every single night. Our physical intimacy began declining gradually. Where we used to be affectionate and connected, Travis became distant and preoccupied. He would fall asleep immediately after work, claiming exhaustion, and our weekend mornings that used to be filled with laughter and closeness became silent and awkward. I noticed, but chose to trust, completely believing that work stress was temporary and our strong foundation would carry us through this rough patch. Around the same time, Brooke started acting strangely too. She had always texted me multiple times daily, sharing funny memes, asking for advice, or just checking in, but suddenly our communication became sporadic and surface level. When we did talk, she seemed distracted and uncomfortable, cutting conversations short or changing subjects abruptly. She mentioned having some marriage problems with Kevin, but was unusually vague about details, which was completely unlike her normal tendency to overshare everything. The discovery that shattered my entire world happened on a Tuesday evening in March when I returned early from a work conference in Seattle. I had decided to surprise Travis stopping at his favorite Thai restaurant to pick up dinner and planning this romantic evening together. The conference had ended a day early, and I was so excited to see him after 3 days apart. When I pulled into our driveway, I immediately noticed Brooke's silver Honda Civic parked in our garage, which was strange because she had not mentioned planning to visit. I grabbed the takeout bags and quietly entered through the front door, calling out that I was home but receiving no response. The house felt different somehow, charged with an energy that made my stomach clench with inexplicable anxiety. As I climbed the stairs toward our bedroom, I heard sounds that made my blood run cold. Laughter, soft music, and unmistakably intimate noises were coming from behind our closed bedroom door. My hands trembled as I turned the doorknob, and nothing could have prepared me for the sight that greeted me. Travis and Brooke were in our bed completely naked and lost in each other, surrounded by rose petals and flickering candles like some romantic movie scene. The confrontation that followed was explosive and devastating. Both of them scrambled to cover themselves, their faces showing pure panic and guilt. I stood frozen in the doorway, the Thai food containers falling from my hands and crashing onto our hardwood floor. The betrayal felt like a physical blow to my chest, stealing my breath and making my legs weak. Through my tears and rage, I demanded explanations that only made everything worse. Brooke confessed that their affair had been going on for 8 months, starting during last summer's family vacation to Cannon Beach. Travis, looking more embarrassed than remorseful, told me that he had fallen in love with Brooke and wanted a divorce so they could be together properly. Every word felt like another knife twisting in my heart. The details they revealed were sickening and calculated. They had been using family gatherings as opportunities to sneak away together, texting constantly throughout each day and meeting in hotels when I was working late or traveling for conferences. Brooke claimed that she and Kevin had been separated for months, which I later discovered was a complete lie. They had been planning to tell me after finding the right time, as if there could ever be an appropriate moment for such devastating news. What made everything exponentially worse was how they tried to shift blame onto me during this confrontation. Travis accused me of being a neglectful wife who focused too much on my career and not enough on our marriage. Brooke suggested that I had been emotionally distant and that their connection was something that just happened naturally. They painted themselves as star-crossed lovers, and me as the obstacle standing in the way of their happiness. The immediate aftermath was a blur of packing phone calls and legal consultations. Travis moved out that same night to stay with Brooke, leaving me alone in our house with nothing but memories and broken dreams. I filed for divorce within the week, hiring the best attorney I could afford, and preparing for what I knew would be a lengthy and painful process. What happened next was somehow even more devastating than discovering the affair itself. When I turned to my family for support during the darkest period of my life, they not only failed to provide comfort, but actively chose to support Brooke and Travis's relationship. The betrayal from my parents felt almost worse than the original affair, because it came from people who were supposed to protect and love me unconditionally. My mother's initial reaction seemed supportive when I called her crying that first night, but within weeks her tune completely changed. She started making comments about how love is unpredictable and suggesting that maybe this was meant to happen for a reason. She would call me daily not to check on my emotional well-being, but to pressure me into accepting the situation and moving forward with grace. My father, who had always been my hero and protector, became increasingly uncomfortable with the family drama and wanted everyone to work things out like adults. He refused to take sides, claiming that family unity was more important than individual hurt feelings. When I tried to explain the depth of my pain and betrayal, he would change the subject or suggest that I was being too emotional and needed to think more rationally about the situation. The worst part was watching my parents gradually embrace Travis and Brooke as a legitimate couple. They started inviting them to family dinners, including them in holiday celebrations, and treating their relationship as if it were completely normal and acceptable. When I expressed my horror and refused to attend these gatherings, I was labeled as stubborn, vindictive, and someone who was holding grudges unnecessarily. Extended family members, cousins, aunts, and uncles began taking sides, and unfortunately, most of them supported what they saw as young love conquering all obstacles. They bought into Brooke and Travis's narrative that their connection was something special and rare, worth the pain it caused. Family friends who had known me since childhood started treating me like I was the villain in this story, someone who was standing in the way of true happiness. The manipulation and gaslighting from everyone was relentless and psychologically devastating. Brooke would call me crying, claiming that she never meant for this to happen, but that her love for Travis was too strong to resist. She would beg for my forgiveness while simultaneously defending their relationship and asking me to be her maid of honor again if they decided to get married. Travis would send long emails explaining how our marriage had been dead for years and how finding love with Brooke had awakened something in him that he never knew existed. He claimed that staying with me would have been unfair to both of us, presenting their affair as some kind of favor to my future happiness. My parents constantly pressured me to attend family events where Travis and Brooke would be present as a couple, expecting me to be civil and mature about the situation. When I refused, I was accused of ruining family harmony and being selfish with my grief. They wanted me to smile and pretend that everything was fine while watching my ex-husband and sister hold hands at the dinner table, where we had shared so many happy memories. The final breaking point came during what was supposed to be a family intervention, but felt more like an ambush. My parents invited me to Sunday dinner, without mentioning that Travis and Brooke would be there as an official couple. When I walked into the dining room and saw them sitting together holding hands and looking comfortable, something inside me snapped completely. I demanded that my family choose between supporting me during the most difficult time in my life or accepting this relationship that had destroyed everything I held dear. I explained that I could not and would not pretend that their affair was acceptable, and I needed my family to stand with me during this devastating period. My mother started crying, claiming that she loved me, but could not control who Brooke fell in love with. My father said I was making the situation harder than it needed to be, and that forcing people to choose sides would only create more pain for everyone involved. They wanted me to accept the unacceptable and move forward as if nothing had changed. When I realized that my family would never prioritize my emotional well-being over avoiding conflict, I made the most difficult decision of my life. I told them that if they chose Travis and Brooke over me, they would lose me completely. I packed up everything I owned, blocked every family member on social media and my phone, and walked out of their lives forever. The 6 years that followed were the most challenging but ultimately transformative period of my entire life. I relocated to a different neighborhood in Portland, far enough away to avoid accidental encounters, but close enough to maintain my job and established friendships. I threw myself completely into my career, advancing from a staff physical therapist to a senior position with administrative responsibilities and specialized training in sports medicine. Therapy became my lifeline during this period. I spent countless hours working with Dr. Martinez, a trauma specialist, who helped me understand the complex dynamics of betrayal, family dysfunction, and emotional manipulation. Through cognitive behavioral therapy and EMDR sessions, I slowly began rebuilding my sense of self-worth and learning to trust my own judgment again. I deliberately created a new social circle, joining hiking groups, book clubs, and volunteer organizations where I could meet people who knew nothing about my past. These friendships were built on shared interests and mutual respect, rather than family obligation or history. I discovered parts of myself that had been dormant during my marriage, developing passions for photography, rock climbing, and sustainable gardening. 2 years ago, I met Jake through a hiking group exploring the Columbia River Gorge. He was an architect, with kind eyes, a gentle sense of humor, and absolutely no connection to my previous life. Our relationship developed slowly and naturally, built on honest communication, shared values, and genuine compatibility. Jake knew about my family estrangement and supported my boundaries without trying to fix or change the situation. My life had become peaceful, fulfilling, and entirely my own. I owned a beautiful condo with panoramic views of Mount Hood, had a successful career that gave me purpose and financial independence, and maintained meaningful relationships with people who respected and valued me. The pain of losing my family had transformed into a quiet strength and unshakable confidence in my ability to create happiness independently. Then, on a random Thursday morning in November, I received an email that shattered my carefully constructed peace. The sender was my mother, using an email address I had never blocked because I did not know it existed. The subject line read, "Time to heal. Brooke is pregnant," and my hands literally shook as I opened it. The email was 3 paragraphs of manipulation disguised as reconciliation.